Now, here we go again with Kathleen Kennedy being praised by Bob Chapek, CEO of Disney, and many Star Wars fans not being happy about it. This time it was at the 2021 annual shareholders meeting, and considering I kind of addressed all this in a video a few days ago, how Chapek had good things to say about Kennedy, and why I think that's the case, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it here, and mainly I'll just be reiterating what I had to say then. After that, there's two other things I'd like to quickly cover or talk about, those being the recent and very sudden cancellation of two Star Wars books that were connected to The Mandalorian and the strange reason given as to why they were canceled, as well as something many people have been asking me about, which is what do I think about the rock character named Geode that was introduced in the High Republic book, Into the Dark. Okay, so first of all, here at the Disney investor meeting a few days back, Bob Chapek was asked directly if he had any plans to fire Kathleen Kennedy and possibly replace her with Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau, or maybe the two having some type of co-leadership of the company, and to that Chapek said, "We've been absolutely thrilled that we can have the kind of creative talent in our company, the likes of Kathy Kennedy, to run Lucas, and we look forward to having Kathy directing the activities of the entire Lucasfilm organization for many years to come." And just like I said a couple days ago, I know that's not what a lot of fans want to hear. I know they want Chapek to say that yes, they're looking to fire and replace her, but even if that is the case, even if they want her gone and have no plans to renew her contract, which expires in 6 months, they're never going to say that. Since The Last Jedi came out, many in the fan base have been calling for her to be fired, and those who have been doing that have been labeled as the toxic part of the fan base. And hence, there's no way Disney wants to be seen as appeasing or catering to them, even though by and large they're just disappointed fans who want what's best for the franchise and don't think that Kennedy is it. And so when Kennedy does eventually go, which could be as soon as 6 months despite what he just said, it'll be on her terms, or at least it'll be presented that way, even though behind the scenes Disney could be forcing her hand. And until that happens, until she goes, Disney will continue to praise her and say they want her to stay, that they've been happy with everything she has done, all the way up until that very moment that she is gone, until she steps away. And then they'll briefly lament her parting, thank her for all she's done, and the company will then immediately move on. That's just how it all works. I mean, if you follow professional sports, you'll know that oftentimes fans will call for the firing of a head coach, but the front office or ownership will usually keep publicly supporting that coach. They are, after all, still in charge of your team, and you don't want everything to fall apart underneath them. And so they'll continue to support that coach all the way up till the very moment that they fire them, at which point it's usually very cordial. They'll thank the coach, say things like, it just wasn't the right fit, or they don't fit with future plans, and then they'll very quickly stop talking about them, and instead say they just want to focus on the future now, that it's only about what's best for the team, and something very similar will happen with Kennedy, only again, she'll be the one to step away, and Disney will thank her, but want to just look ahead when it happens. Alright, and next up here, let's talk about the curious and sudden cancellation of two books associated with The Mandalorian, and the very odd explanation given as to why. The first one was the official visual dictionary for the show, and in a statement on Twitter, DK Books said, "Due to the ever-expanding world of The Mandalorian, we will no longer be publishing the Mandalorian Ultimate Visual Guide at this time, as the story continues to unfold on screen." Then, at roughly the exact same time, Del Rey put out this statement on Twitter about an upcoming Mandalorian novel that said, "Due to the ever-expanding world of The Mandalorian, we will no longer be publishing the Mandalorian original novel at this time, as the story continues to unfold on screen." Now, this is just a really strange explanation, the ever-expanding world of The Mandalorian, as if you didn't know it was going to keep expanding. And what does this have to do with a visual dictionary that will basically be covering everything we've already seen in the first 2 seasons of the show, or a novel that contains a story that'll likely do little more than give filler or backstory to a character or characters in the show? I mean, certainly before work on them even began, parameters were set about what they could cover, and that they'd be made flexible to sort of fit in with anything that might happen in Season 3 and beyond. Unless maybe somehow there were bigger plans for the books to start to unveil, especially the novels, I'd imagine, that they might set up something down the road that's no longer happening, like perhaps a series that included the character Cara Dune. Maybe the novel was even set after season 2 of the show and heavily features her, and like I said, really begins to set up a series that was going to include her or lead directly into season 3 of The Mandalorian. That has now been changed since Cara Dune will likely not be in it unless they recast the character, which I really don't think they're going to do. And perhaps the visual dictionary makes some references to that book, so they canceled it or are reworking it. But that doesn't make much sense since the visual dictionary comes out or was scheduled to come out before the novel, so I highly doubt there's a lot of references to it in the visual dictionary that might otherwise be spoilers. I'd have to imagine it'd be easy enough to edit those parts out as well. And do keep in mind these books are basically done. These are not recently announced projects or unfinished projects being canceled. These are essentially completed books that just aren't going to be released because of the ever-expanding world of The Mandalorian. Though I'd argue this is likely the opposite of that they're planning on shrinking the world, or should I say eliminating one character from it. And look, no matter how you feel about the Gina Carano situation one way or the other, I really don't think we need to delete Cara Dune from the Star Wars galaxy or cancel books because they include the character of Cara Dune. And sure, I suppose this could have nothing to do with her, that maybe there are other big problems going on with Season 3 of The Mandalorian, as some have reported on, and that the ever-changing story is affecting the novel somehow, that it no longer makes sense in the new context. But I still don't know how that would affect the visual dictionary, because all that really is, assuming it's like every other visual dictionary Star Wars has ever done, is it's going to be something that discusses the characters, the ships, locations, technology, and so on of everything we've already seen in the show. So the ever-changing excuse really doesn't make sense there. Anyway, let's move on to the last thing, that being the character Geode that was introduced in the High Republic novel Into the Dark. And if you don't know what I'm talking about or haven't heard this already, the book introduces a character that looks like a rock or a slab of stone essentially, and I do mean literally. Though he's technically not a rock, he's a Ventian, a species that just looks like a rock or a flaky slab of stone essentially. Furthermore, he's even somehow the co-pilot of a ship called Vessel, even though in the book we never quote-unquote see him move or hear him speak, if you will, nor is it described how those things are even possible considering he has no appendages or a mouth or anything of the sort. Most of the time he just sort of shows up in a different location, or it's implied he did or said something somehow. Because some of the characters in the book actually do apparently interact and speak with him, we again don't see it happening or have it described. It's always just sort of implied to have happened by some of the other characters, while others in the book never seem to see him move and are basically just as clueless as the reader about what's going on with this character. And according to the author of the book, Claudia Gray, the idea behind Geode was to not make another Chewbacca-type co-pilot, which she has certainly pulled off, and that she wanted to challenge the Jedi's understanding of what a life form is or could be. And oftentimes in the book, the Jedi do sort of ponder what's up with him. They at first think he's just a rock, until they also sort of come to accept him and realize that he is more. As for my thoughts and opinion on this, and do keep in mind I have indeed read the book, well, I thought it was pretty silly and stupid, yes, but it honestly didn't bother me all that much. Mainly because it was always kind of played as a joke, and I must admit, at times it was actually humorous. However, I think she went to the well one too many times, and eventually the joke gets kind of old, and I wanted an actual answer as to what is up with this character. I kept waiting for one of the characters who didn't know Geode at first, like one of the Jedi, to see him move and to have the whole thing explained as to how he could move and talk if he just has the outward appearance of a slab of stone. And I kind of assumed he could change forms to some extent or something, that he really isn't just a rock. And yes, I realize that I'm sort of making excuses for something that I said was pretty silly and stupid, but I've seen a lot of people absolutely just ripping this thing apart, which it's their prerogative to do so, don't get me wrong. But I'm guessing a lot of them didn't actually read the book, because if they did, they'd see it is mostly played as a joke, which is not to say I want Star Wars to be treated like a joke, but in my opinion, it's not as bad as some are making it out to be. Because it was also then partly played to, in a way, challenge the Jedi and other characters of the book who didn't know what to make of him either, just like us, the reader, or didn't believe he could do all these things. It was this whole more than meets the eye idea, I guess. And so there is a purpose to the character. I'm not saying it's a great one, but he's not just there to have a rock character in a Star Wars story. Now, all that said, do I think it should have been in the book and thus made part of the official Star Wars canon? No, I certainly don't think so, not unless in the end they finally would have explained it, and maybe they will at some point in a future story, or maybe they will now after the backlash to it. I really don't know. But again, not a good character, but not the worst thing I've ever seen in Star Wars. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think about anything or everything I had to say here. So do leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.